Welcome to this IndieReCon session on the Creative Roundtable. We have with us today myself. I'm David Penney. I'm a writer. I've been a writer for more years than I like to think. And we also have Ros Morris and Christie Nolfi. If you could both perhaps just introduce yourself. Perhaps Ros first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I've also been writing for a considerable number of years. I'm now a full-time author, fiction editor and non-fiction editor as well, a book doctor. I've ghostwritten quite a lot of novels, so you may well have read my work but not known it was by me. And I now self-publish. I self-publish both literary fiction and a series of books on writing. I have a radio show called So You Want to Be a Writer and a blog called Nail Your Novel.
Thanks, Ros. And Christie, a little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Christie Nolfi. I'm from South Carolina in the U.S. I've also been writing for a frightening number of years. I started out as a freelance writer and had a PR firm, and then made the leap into fiction writing in my mid-40s. I'm also a full-time novelist. I write women's fiction and mainstream fiction.
Great, good. I'll just cover my history briefly. I'm David Penney. I was a trad publisher back in the 70s. I had 4 novels published, an agent, everything writers always used to dream of, and then I just stopped and gave it all up. And came back to it 35 years later and started writing again in my late 50s. And so I've only have 1 book out at the moment, but I have plans for many more. So we're talking today about creativity and what being creative means. So let's kick off first. I'll ask the first question to Ros. What elements do you think you have to have in place before you initiate work on a new project, Ros?
Well, I've always done quite a bit of preparation before I start work in earnest. So I've got on my computer a folder called Embryos, where I keep ideas that I want to work on, that I think will have the potential to eventually become novels. Sometimes I find 2 of the ideas fit together to make 1 novel, and sometimes I just find that the 1 file has got enough in it to get me reading more. But when I decide I'm going to get working in earnest, I've already got a few ideas of things that I could make out of it. So I'd never just sit down with a blank page and start writing. I've also already done a lot of thinking and perhaps watching movies that tie in with the idea, making reading lists and making soundtrack lists as well. I'm very keen on using pieces of music to get me into the mood for a particular project. So I never have the blank page. I already have quite a bit of inspiration that's ready to be drawn on.
Great. Interesting about the music, because I've filled in one of your posts on what music inspires you. Very good indeed. How about what about yourself, Christine? How do you do it?
When I have the kernel of an idea for a novel, I first must have the characters. And to really have an intimate knowledge of the characters, I interview them longhand, not in front of a computer. I'm writing longhand in first person as if I'm the character. And I have to do that for several weeks to get an idea of who they are, to let my subconscious germinate. And I need to have part of the plot together when I begin, but I can't have everything. I need to have the characters surprise me. So I ensure that I know the characters well, whoever the protagonist is and the more important secondary characters, and then I have the basis of the plot I believe I'm following. But then I let the book unfold on its own.
I think that's an important point, that we make plans and then we let our increased knowledge of the characters or the situation or anything, we let it guide us.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, for myself, yeah.
I think.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go on, Christy. Go on.
I think if you have written several novels, you learn to trust the process. I think when you're beginning, if you're a debut novelist, you're struggling in the dark. You don't understand how your process works, and you need to learn what works for you and how to unfold your characters, because there has to be a certain amount of discovery in the writing. Discovery for you as the author to add excitement to the prose.
Yeah, definitely, because that's also what helps you understand what the book should be as well. There's a lot that you find out, I think, during the writing, particularly the first draft.
Yes, no question.
Yeah. Oh, we seem to have frozen. So, Christine, how many novels have you got? Have you written now?
I have 6 published, and I've written 2 more that I'm about to publish that I think might expand to 4 novels. It's a new series, and I'm not sure how. Again, it's a case of discovery. I'm adding new characters in as I write each piece, and I'm not clear yet on where this will end. And I like that sense of wonder, discovery as I go along.
Interesting.
David, you're back.
I am. Did I disappear for a while there?
You did for a moment.
I'm hoping it's still going to be recording, but I wouldn't bet on it. We'll see. That's good. It's probably my we have fantastic broadband in this building, but I think the whole of the town is on its knees at the moment. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. I did hear most of what you said, so that's fine. That's good. But interestingly, I think both of you say that it's the characters that start it for you. Is that right? Rather than plot or scene or setting? Does it start with the characters always?
I sometimes get an idea for a setting that seems to demand people who would be challenged by it, or an idea that seems to demand people who would be challenged by it. So I might not get the character initially, but I'll get something and I'll think, okay, I need to find the person for whom this will be the trial of their lives. So the characters, even if they're not the initial spark, they come in, they're the next thing that I build. And then with the novel I'm working on at the moment, what I did was I had a situation and I just thought, well, I will see what people do. And so it came from what they felt they had to do, what they wanted to stop happening. And this is something that I tell people: if they've got characters but no plot, you can just play with them and see where they take you.
Yeah, I suppose if you make your characters real enough, if they're in things and go off in all sorts of directions, then all you have to do is hold on tight and follow them, don't you?
Yes, and let them express themselves. Let them tell you what they want and who they are, and the things that are going to scare them. Usually, it's quite a good idea at some point. If you've identified something that somebody wants to prevent, then you've got a really important story kernel there.
Yeah.
Yes. Reaching into someone's fears and forcing that character to approach the fear. That works well for me too.
Yeah.
And then finding the opposite in characters. Once you create your main characters, I need to have accent characters populate the story that force more awareness in the main character, force them to confront the issues they don't want to confront. So that natural conflict works as I populate my stories.
Yes, you find people who are going to play well with each other and people are going to play badly with each other and make everything, the chemistry, yes.
You don't want everybody to be nice, do you? They have to not play well together in order to create the conflict that makes the story.
Yes, and you want them to be, you also want them, even if they are basically nice and decent, you want them to have something that's going to, you want to test their comfort zones. Their comfort zones, the limit of the comfort zone is where the story is.
It is, yeah. You have to stretch people beyond their normal boundaries and throw them into abnormal situations.
It's helpful for me as I get to the scene by scene with the characters. I have to remind myself that every character enters a scene with a different agenda. And if you keep that in mind as you're writing, and this is true in life, we all have a different agenda. And that creates more tension in the scenes, if you keep that in mind. Everybody enters the scene with a different agenda.
Yep. I love that Kurt Vonnegut quotation that says, everybody wants something, even if it's only a glass of water. It's just great.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you're being creative, when you're creating your work, do you have a routine? Does it help you? Does it hinder you? Or do you not have one at all?
Are you asking
Christine,
Roz
you
or
go first.
Sorry, sorry, Christine first. Yeah.
I'm a little bit like the military. I have a very strict routine, but that comes from years of working in public relations and working on deadline. I had to have a routine. I couldn't miss the copy, whatever the word count was, and I brought that into fiction writing. So most days I'm up very early. I'm most creative in the morning hours. I tend to live in my gym clothes because I have to break midday to go to the gym and work out. And then I come back and I take care of marketing and social media and do any editing that I'd like to do. I don't know how anyone writes at midnight or writes at random times. That consistency for me ensures that I make my deadlines.
Yeah,
Roz,
I think routine is important, yeah. Roz?
Well, I find that the more I get bedded into the book, the more I can parachute in at odd times. But what I like to do is, as Christine says, get up early, and before I've done anything else, I spend some time with my book, and that might be writing the next scene that I want to deal with, editing the next scene I want to deal with, or it might be doing some research, or just thinking over a problem that I need to solve. But then I find when I go on to other things during the day, if I've got other deadlines for other work, because I do editing and various kinds of freelancing, the book is in my head and it's loaded and it's ready to give me ideas and feedback at any time. And I think this is an important thing, because a lot of us are struggling to make enough time to write, and we're juggling a lot of things. But if you load the book in your head first thing, then you carry it around with you, and you can do a lot of really good work in the background. And I
think there's another point to that. Even if you're working a 9-to-5 job, if you can find 20 minutes in the morning to work on your novel, or as you said, Roz, think of the ideas, just let it germinate. You're carrying the dream world into your fiction because you've just risen from sleep. A lot of our most creative works come out of our subconscious, and then you allow that to carry into your day. And sometimes, even if you don't think you're a morning person, some of the ideas that will arrive for your work, if you get out of bed and just sit down and look at the book, will astound you.
Yeah. And Christine, you mentioned the gym. I find that very useful as well. We've got a bit of a here, haven't we? Yeah, I was going to say that I find I get good ideas. I go running with anything in the headphones. Something like that gives you a different way of thinking.
Well, and we're very sedentary when we're creating, but our most creative time is when we're actively using our body, not just our gray matter.
It can
so
also,
going to the gym or running.
Yeah.
Also, there's something about the simplicity of running. I find that makes me focus on just one thing, whereas if I'm at my desk, my brain is a bit overactive and a bit confused. Yes. Do you find that too?
Yes, you tend to be more scattered, whereas if I'm running on a treadmill, I'm focused, and then when I come back home, I have great ideas for whatever it is that I'm working on. There's something, that singular direction of running, that single focus.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm afraid I'm no runner. Roz has met me. She knows I'm no runner.
We'll talk you into it, David.
Yeah. No, I don't. I do cycle and I do swim. So I think it probably counts a little. Swimming is very good. Yes, yeah, I do love swimming. I haven't been for a long time, but I do love it. It's. But I think the general consensus then is well, no, it isn't. Christine says she has a routine. Roz says you have less of one. I'm a routine person, I must admit. And I always have been, less so than I used to be, and I'm afraid I'm not a morning person either, Christine. I usually sit down about 10:30 until 2:30 or 3, and then we go and take the dog for a walk. So it's not quite the same as running, but it's very similar.
I get great ideas when I walk the dog. I keep a pen and paper in my pocket just in case halfway on the walk I go, oh, eureka! Another great idea.
Yeah. Now, somebody once said to me that the difference between a professional writer, whether you're indie or not, a professional writer always carries a notebook with them, and an amateur writer doesn't. And I think there might be some truth in that. I try to carry one, but don't always, because if you're out and you don't have something to write it down, you're guaranteed to get the best idea you've ever had.
Oh,
and by the time you get back home, it's totally gone. And you think,
driving. I find driving's quite dangerous because I get good ideas when, you know, going at high speed, and I just have to really try and keep
on the road.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, actually.
Stay off the freeway, Roz.
Pray for a red light. But this is what's interesting here is I think something that's emerging, that our books are built in small pieces, aren't they? With one idea leading to another idea, and a long process of sifting and working at it, and carrying the book with you until you get very familiar with it. And I think that people who haven't tried this before don't realise how our books are built like this.
Yeah.
I can see you before. This makes sense to you.
Do you tend to find? I mean, you have a creative partner, I know, Roz. I'm not sure about you, Christine, but sometimes people around you don't understand the almost obsession you have for what you've created. You said, Roz, you lodge your book in your mind in the morning, and then you can carry it around with you all day. I think to some extent I can sympathise. I will often lodge the book in my mind when I start it, and I won't put it down until it's finished, so that I'm carrying it around for maybe a couple of months at a go.
Yes.
And I think writers act differently to other people. We're carrying this stuff around in our heads, and we're thinking about it all the time.
Yeah, and also...
Go on, Roz.
No, sorry. I find that once I get quite bedded into the book, it's as if the universe starts giving me ideas. So I'll see a book title that makes me think, this is an angle I hadn't thought of. Or somebody will say something and I'll think, eureka. It becomes so much part of the fabric of my thinking that it's as if everything is starting to contribute to it. But if I describe that to a non-writer or someone who doesn't find so much reward in creativity, then they do think I'm a bit mad.
I find that once I pass the 100-page mark, all bets are off. But my family understands this. I don't know if my friends do. My extended family maybe not so much. But I reach a point where it's all-consuming. I'm like David. Once it's in, I have to finish. And once I get past that 100-page mark, I have to just allow the story to consume me until it's complete. At least the draft, and then I can take a break for a month or two.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting you say the 100-page mark, because one of the questions we've got down is about the sagging middle. Obviously you don't have that, Christine, because the 100-page mark and onwards is your middle. And in fact, when I was looking at this, my response was that I don't believe in a sagging middle either. I think a sagging middle is probably a sign that you don't know enough about your story and it hasn't taken you over yet. I love the middle of stories because that's where you really get to grips with the characters and build them, isn't it?
Yes, that's where the meat comes in. But again, that's after you've learned your characters and you know them intimately. So I agree with you. Sagging middle may be that you don't know your characters as well or haven't thought your plot out thoroughly.
Yeah. Are you? I don't know if it's one of the questions or not. It probably isn't. But do you plot extensively? I'm pretty sure. I don't know if Roz does actually. I would have said she does, but I don't know the answer to that. So it'd be interesting to hear. Do you plot, Roz?
I do, and I make a series of cards with what I'm going to write. In fact, I've got here the cards for the first draft of Everest. Here they are. That is the plan, and I've got pictures on my website of how I spread it all over my dining room table to decide which order all the events would go in. And then I started writing, and I changed them all around. But that was part of me getting to know it, getting to know what could happen and then what should happen. So I plot as part of a kind of brainstorming experience with myself. There are some books, though, that I've written where I've followed the plan completely all the way through, and it's worked well. So it really just depends on how the book's developing for me. Each book, although I have systems that I follow, that address the various kinds of thinking I need to do at different times. So high-level thinking and then detailed thinking. I find it has to be flexible according to just what I've discovered as I'm writing.
What about you, Christine? Do you have a lot of plot in advance?
I'm similar to Roz. I don't use note cards, but I'll have 1 or 2 sentences of each scene that I believe will be in, and I have that inside a Word document. And then I just add to that if I think of something else.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't have the entire book plotted. I need to leave room to allow my characters to surprise me. And they always do. This is not ever fail. It's interesting, Roz, you mentioned you lay it all out on the dining room table. When I get my first draft finished, I have to physically walk the book. And I take the entire draft, scene by scene, and I put it around my dining room table, and I physically walk the book so that I can look at points of view, I can look at progression, is there a lot of tension here, and this is a little slower here. And I have to do a physical thing similar to what you're talking about, where you lay it all out. And somehow that always tightens the book. Or I realize that this scene should have been in Chapter 3, not Chapter 10, or I can take that scene out completely.
Yeah, I do a similar thing once I finish my first draft. I do an analysis. I call it the beat sheet. It's based on something that Hollywood scriptwriters do, but I adapted it very heavily for writing novels. And it fulfills all those functions you would describe.